The rain came without warning. One moment the sky was gray and low, the kind of gray that pressed down on everything like a ceiling too close to the floor. The next, it opened. Cold, hard, indifferent, the sort of rain that doesn't care what it interrupts. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of a 2-lane road outside Millbrook, Connecticut, one hand raised above his eyes against the downpour, the other gripping the shoulder of his daughter's jacket. His truck sat 30 yards behind them with its hood propped open like the jaw of something dead. The engine had simply stopped. No warning light, no sputtering cough, just silence, then the sound of rain on metal. He had checked the belt. He had checked the battery terminals, which he could barely see in the failing afternoon light. He had done everything a man who spent his days elbow deep in other people's engines could do on the side of a road in October. It wasn't going to help. Daddy. Lily's voice came from just below his arm. She was 7 years old, and she had her hood up. But the hood was small, and her face was getting wet anyway. She didn't cry about it. She almost never cried about anything, which was a trait that sometimes broke his heart. Is the truck dead? Not dead, he said. Just resting. That's what you said about Mr. Henderson's Buick. Mr. Henderson's Buick was a special case. You said it was dead. Lily, you said it was very dead. He looked down at her. Her eyes were serious and wet, and exactly the shade of brown he still woke up some mornings expecting to see in a face that was no longer there. He looked away. We need a ride, he said. The road that ran through this stretch of Millbrook's outer edge was not a busy road. It connected the older residential neighborhoods to the newer commercial developments on the far side of town, and at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon in October, most of the people who used it were already where they needed to be. 3 cars had passed in the last 10 minutes. None of them slowed. Ethan didn't blame them, exactly. A man standing alone on a wet road at dusk, he understood what that looked like. He understood the calculation people made when they saw it. He had made it himself, in another life, behind the wheel of a better car. He pulled out his phone. The screen had a crack across the lower left corner from when he'd dropped it in the shop 2 weeks ago. The rideshare app loaded slowly, then showed him an estimate, 42 minutes. He did the math. If a car came right now, they would still be late. Not by much, but late enough. Lily tugged his sleeve. Daddy, that lady is slowing down. He looked up. The car was a dark gray Mercedes, the kind that didn't announce itself, that wore its expense quietly. It had pulled to the shoulder about 20 feet ahead. Hazard lights blinking amber through the rain. The passenger window descended. Ethan walked toward it, his hand still on Lily's shoulder. He bent slightly to look inside. The woman in the driver's seat was looking at him. She was perhaps 35 or 36, with dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, and almost certainly wasn't. She wore a charcoal blazer over a dark blouse, and she held the steering wheel with one hand, the other resting in her lap. Her expression was composed, not unkind, but measured. The face of someone who made decisions quickly and without a great deal of visible sentiment. Her eyes moved from him to Lily, then back. Your truck? She asked. Yes, ma'am. A pause. Very brief. Where are you going? St. Catherine's. It's about 4 miles north. My daughter has a... He stopped. He had been going to say appointment, but it wasn't that, exactly. She has something. At the school attached to the parish. The woman looked at Lily again. Lily looked back at her with the open, unself-conscious directness that children deploy and adults spend years trying to relearn. Hi, Lily said. The woman's expression shifted. Not much, a fraction. Something moved behind it that she didn't quite let through. Get in, she said. The car smelled like leather, and something faint, an expensive cedar, maybe, or vetiver. The seats were warm. Lily pressed her wet palms against her knees and looked around with the frank curiosity of someone who has been told to be polite, but hasn't yet mastered the art of pretending not to notice things. Your heater is really good, Lily said. Thank you, the woman said. Our heater broke last winter. Daddy put blankets over the vents. Ethan looked out the window. Lily. It worked though, Lily said, not accusingly. Just reporting a fact. The woman drove without speaking for a moment. The wipers moved in their steady rhythm. The road ahead was silver in the headlights, rain-slicked and empty. I'm Lily, Lily said. What's your name? Another pause. This one longer. Sophia, the woman said. That's a pretty name. Thank you. Daddy's name is Ethan. He fixes cars. That's funny because his car broke. Ethan turned from the window. Lily, I think Sophia might want some quiet. I don't mind, Sophia said, and her voice had something careful in it. Not warmth, exactly. Something more like the shape of warmth, held at a slight distance. Ethan studied the side of her face. She was watching the road. Her jaw was set, not tight, but deliberate. The way a person holds their face when they are concentrating on something other than what they appear to be concentrating on. He had the sudden, disorienting sense that he was being watched back, even though her eyes hadn't moved. He looked at his hands. His hands were clean, he had washed them before picking Lily up, but the creases of his knuckles still held faint shadows of engine grease. They were not the hands of a man who had once sat in a business strategy seminar at the University of Connecticut and argued confidently about market disruption. They were the hands of someone who worked on things and fixed them, or tried to. You live in Millbrook? He asked. No, she said. Passing through. On your way north? South, actually. He didn't ask anything else. He looked out at the rain. Her phone rang somewhere in the second mile. She didn't answer it. But the name appeared on the display of the car's console screen, visible for 3 or 4 seconds before she dismissed it. Diane Hartwell Capital. Ethan didn't mean to read it. His eyes simply moved to the screen the way eyes move toward light. And the words were there. Hartwell Capital. He had seen that name before. He had seen it recently, in fact, on the cover of a magazine in the waiting room of his dentist's office. There had been a photograph. A woman standing in front of a glass building, a headline about venture capital, and something called the Callaway Initiative. He turned his head very slightly and looked at Sophia's profile again. The woman in the photograph had her hair down. He looked back at the road. Sophia. He knew only one Sophia who had ever looked at him the way this woman had looked at him, not with recognition, but with the careful absence of recognition. That is its own kind of recognition. Sophia Bennett. The name arrived in his chest before it arrived in his mind. He sat very still. The rain on the windshield. The wipers. Lily's quiet breath beside him. Because she had finally fallen into one of her sudden silences that could last anywhere from 30 seconds to 15 minutes. He did not say anything. He looked at his hands again. There was a version of himself, the version from 12 years ago, 24 years old and certain of the future, in the way that only the young can afford to be, who would have turned to her immediately. Who would have spoken? Who would have found the courage for the moment before the moment passed? That version of him had made a lot of decisions that had consequences he was still living inside. He said nothing. Sophia had known for certain since the first moment he stepped into the light of the window. She had pulled over because of the child. There was no other reason she didn't stop for hitchhikers. She didn't stop for anyone. She had learned very early in her professional life that spontaneous generosity was a luxury that cost you things you couldn't anticipate. But the small figure standing beside the man, the way the child's hood sat crooked, and the arms wrapped around themselves against the cold, that had been something different. She had pulled over before she had consciously decided to, and then she had seen his face. 12 years was a long time. 12 years changed the angles of a face, added weight around the jaw and shadows below the eyes, worked on a person the way weather works on stone. But there were things that didn't change. The way he held his shoulders when he was uncertain, slightly forward, as if preparing to absorb something. The way his eyes moved before the rest of his face caught up with what they were seeing. She had recognized him before she recognized him. She had said her name, her given name, not the name she was known by professionally, and watched to see if he reacted. He hadn't, or he had and was hiding it with a stillness she recognized from another context, from a different version of both of them. She drove. She was aware of his hands in her peripheral vision. She was aware of the space between them, 18 inches of leather and heated air, as something with weight and texture. She had not expected this. She had not expected anything when she turned off the interstate toward Millbrook, because the GPS had suggested an alternate route. She had not expected to find Ethan Cole standing in the rain with a broken truck and a small daughter who talked like she was narrating a documentary. She had not expected to feel anything. She was 36 years old. She had built a company from a single apartment in New Haven to a firm with 43